So I have taken a wooden tag, got these at Hobby Lobby, and again, applied gesso with a palette knife, one of my favorite ways to apply gesso, and I'm just going to start painting it. We'll see where it goes. I'm going to spritz it, I know, with a little bit of water. Now, this is a really thick chipboard. It probably will swell a little bit, so I'm going to be careful not to put too much moisture on it at first, which is going to be hard. And then I'm going to spritz some of the Shimmer Mr. Turquoise. All right. And then let's spritz it again with some water to get that to move around. Get a paper towel handy. You can use your fingers. Now, you don't have to use chipboard. You could use, they have wood tags. You can even do this in your journal. Same exact techniques I'm doing on the tag. Absolutely, you could do on a page. All right, now with that still wet, I'm going to take some quinacridone gold, just a little, and we'll get a brush with some water. Get nice and inky. And I'm just going to take a pen handy. So, and then I'm just going to splatter some of the quinacridone gold. Okay, let that sit a minute. Try and clean up as I go. And then I'm going to take a soft paper towel. My favorite are Viva. They're soft and don't leave a pattern. Although they do have some now that have a pattern. So be careful if you want one without a pattern. All right, so look how pretty that is. So the tag where there's no gesso is dark, loving that. And then a little bit of oxidation, it looks like, from that quinacridone gold when it's mixed with that turquoise. Two of my favorite colors together. A little bit more of the quinacridone gold and get a little bit more of that splatter. Let that sit. And then dry it. All right, so now I'm going to use some metallic luster. They carry this at Hobby Lobby and other places. This is White Frost, and it's a wax that's very creamy. If yours dries out, you can stick some boiling water in it, take a palette knife and stir it up to kind of get it back to that wax paste. But you can make this into a liquid. So I'm going to take that brush again, rinse it out, and I'm going to come look at, let's see if we can get it on camera. See if it will. It has a shimmer and shine that is so amazing. So I'm going to get some of that liquidy. And let's take another brush. And it's just very pearlized, so pretty. Now I'm gonna leave this open for just a minute so that that water has some time to evaporate, but let me hold this up so that you can see the little splatters of that metallic luster. Absolutely stunning. Now, metallic luster, once it's dry, you can buff it to a sheen. I'm gonna let this sit, and before it dries, I can lightly tap it. It's gonna take some of that dome splatter effect away. But look at that. And just look at that incredible background. That would be so cool on a canvas, on a wood surface, with something painted on top of it. So, such a cool effect. Okay, so everything is dry. My metallic luster, I'm just gonna take a paper towel, and typically I'll take a palette knife, put that out, and not put water right into my container because I don't want it to mildew. All right, so I want a stamped element in the background, so I'm going to use one of my favorite. This is Vintage Note Stampendous stamp. And let me find, so I just have this little sponge dauber. I'm going to put some paint on it. Okay, I think I'm going to go ahead and use some quinacridone gold. And just load that up into the sponge. Tap that right onto the, straight up and down so that you're not getting that down into those grooves in between the words. I want to keep that right on top of the stamped image. And then I'm not going to lay this 100% in place. I want to use just pieces and parts. So I'm going to put a little there, maybe a touch there. So you see a little bit of that in the background. Super cool. I do want a touch. Let's see. Right there. A little touch at the bottom. Oh yeah. Maybe a little there. Yes. So have it in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different places. You always want to make sure you wash off your stamp. So I'm just going to use a little bit of hand sanitizer and a dry stencil brush. Just gently kind of get that paint off. And then I throw it into my water basin just to rinse all of that stuff off. Now, hand sanitizer, you got to be careful. You want to make sure you wipe it off or it will dry out your stamp and it could become brittle. So again, make sure you are washing and rinsing those off well if you use hand sanitizer. All right, so I'm going to ink up this beautiful Spider Mom stamp by Stampendous. And I'm just rubbing that right across. You can tap. This is a brand new ink pad, so it's going to be nice and black and very inky. Okay, now I'm just going to decide. I know I want it to go high, and I'll just improvise and paint the stem. So I'm going to press that in place. Try not to rub. You just want to press firmly. And then lift. Okay. So a couple of places where the gesso is that prevented the stamp from going down. Quite all right. I can always improvise with my pen. Come in. My Adena pen, it's not going to bleed. It's going to give me some lines just like the stamp. Okay, and then the stem, I'm just going to have that go right down. Now the ink is quite wet. I'm going to let that sit for a second. And I'm just going to wipe off this. I don't always wash my stamps when I've used ink, always when I use paint, but not always when I use ink. Okay, so I'm going to take some raw sienna, some Hansa Yellow Light, and some Titan Buff for right now. And I'll just go ahead and put out some white. And maybe a size, like a size 4 or size 6 flat brush. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of Titan Buff. And I'm going to paint in these petals. Now think of a stamp like a line drawing. It's exactly what it is. And I like to keep the stamp close by. So if you're unsure, you know, what a line is, where a line is, the shape of something that might have gotten lost, but use this as a guide. Just because that petal is in that place doesn't mean that I have to keep that petal. Or if I paint it differently, that, you know, it's wrong. It's not. Again, just use this as a guide mark, guidelines, just like you do with the line drawing in a pattern. So not really going for anything opaque or solid, just a dusting of this Titan buff on the petals. Okay, so I went ahead and just painted the stem with the Titan buff as well. Now I'm going to come back with the raw sienna. And we'll start painting in these petals again. Again, nothing exact, just follow the petals as best you can. This one certainly has a lot of them. Okay, now I'm going to pick up a little bit of the Hansa Yellow Light and some white. Just do a tiny little stroke. Now I'll come back in and shade with some raw umber. But for now, just kind of hit, and I'm not really pushing hard because I don't want to cover up the whole petal. Just touch and swipe, touch and swipe. Okay. So, see how that's starting to come along? I do want to fill in. I feel like something down in here is not looking right. So I'm going to make that look like it's a petal, part of a petal. Same thing in here. Right. Now I'm going to take a little bit of yellow and more white. And this time I am going to really kind of concentrate on just getting those tips of those petals. Now, I'm going to be a little daring and try and reline up the flower as best I can. And if I don't get it everywhere, that's quite all right. There are a couple of petals on here that will be good guide marks for me, like this petal right over here. And I can just lay this in place as best I can. Ooh, a little scary. Okay, I'm not mad at that. I'm fine with that. Because again, I can come back in with my Identipen. Separate those petals. Some of them look doubled, and that's quite all right. Kind of makes it look like they've got a little bit of a flip going on. Awesome. Now I will come back with a little bit. Come into the center with a little bit of green. This is yellow green light, just a touch. I'll get a touch of white with that. Just kind of brighten that up. And then I'll take some quinacridone gold. Okay, so I'm gonna get a 3/8 angle. Ooh, and this angle has seen better days. I left this one in my water basin, which is not good. Okay, so at the base of some of these petals, I'm just going to kind of wash in some of this quinacridone gold. See if I can get that glare off. Okay, so I'll just wash in some quinacridone gold at the base of some of these petals. And again, just with the paint on the toe of the brush. Very, very little paint. Do it at the base of those center petals. And then on some of these that flip, do it right there at the flip. Okay, it's really starting to take shape. Getting that shading in. Okay, and just like before with my sunflower, when you put in, sometimes when you go in and you put in your shading, you need to bump up your highlights and vice versa. If your highlights are too bright, you can tone it down by adding in some more shading. And in this case, I need to come back in and add some bright back into those petals, especially the ones here that flip and all you see is that front part. So I'll do that again with the number 4, and I'll use a little white, some yellow, more white. Kind of just skim the paper towel there so you don't have too much. Oops, a little too much there. Again, Not a lot of paint on your brush. You'll be able to control it better and stay within those lines. But if I go over them, quite all right. Again, that Identipen works wonders. I'm gonna use a little more yellow. And when you come back with that yellow over the white, it's actually going to be a lot brighter and prettier. So. Pick up a little bit of green. Let's get that in there. Okay. Kind of digging that. I'm not sure what's going on right here. So it looks like a petal goes there and there. Maybe right there. So I'm going to bring in a little bit of that shading. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of the yellow-green light and some of the Titan Buff, and I'm just going to kind of haphazardly paint in these leaves. Really not going to make a big to-do out of those. I'm going to leave them pretty loose and right down the stem, and then we want to go ahead and dry that. Okay, and then with my angle brush again, we'll pick up some of the sap green and just kind of wash that at the base of the leaf, down the middle. A little too much water in my brush. Okay, so you see that? It's very loose. And then on the stem. Then we'll pick up a little of that green, some sap green, a little bit of white. Let's do some yellow, sap green, and white. Okay. And I'm just going to kind of haphazardly put that on the brighter side, then take the heel, just kind of soften that. And then down the stem. And we're gonna let that dry. And then I'm just gonna go over everything with the Identipen. You can use the fine tip if you don't want the lines to be too thick. And again, just very haphazardly. You can even do very sketchy. Get a little more of that kind of arty look instead of it being precise. And then same thing with the leaves. Just kind of. See, very kind of sketchy. Nothing exact. All right, so I outlined the flower, kind of sketchy outlined the leaves and the stem. And of course, I've got to add some splatter. So, wet brush, some white. And I know I have the splatter of the metallic luster, which is just so pretty. But I am going to do a little bit of splatter of white. Come back and I'm going to do a little splatter of the quinacridone gold. And again, I love the look of the splatter. It kind of softens things. But the other thing it does, since this is a mixed media piece, is it puts some of those things behind the splatter. So again, just adds to that layering effect. See if you can see the splatter there. All right, and we're gonna let that dry. All right, so there we have a quick and easy mixed media piece using rubber stamp. This one is CRS 5110, Cling Garden Mom. It comes with a stencil and additional stamps, but look how pretty and easy, quick line drawing. And then, of course, using the fluid acrylics, the Media Fluid Acrylics by DecoArt. And some metallic luster, some gesso in the background. I did take the Stays On ink pad and go around the edges with that. Just to kind of give them a little bit of a sketchy, scratchy look. Right over the flower and everything, right on that edge. Just to kind of give it a border and finish it off. There we have it. I hope this inspires you guys to create something in your art journal or on a tag or on a wood surface and use some of those techniques. Happy painting, you guys.